Hello there, John Kuturilo here, the counsellor of your listener. Thank you for joining me for this episode. Today I'm going to be briefly discussing the concepts of collectivism and individualism as these concepts relate to world cultures. Now, as per usual, this is not advice in any way. If you have concerns of any description, please seek professional advice. And also, I'm not here placing value judgments on people's cultures. What I'm here is providing some perspectives so that we can be more critical consumers of information. As I'm going to explain, the issue of collectivism as opposed to or in comparison to individualism is not necessarily a simple one. Now, each of the world's cultures can be described on a dimension on which collectivism and individualism are polar opposites, and in every case, there will not be complete collectivism or complete individualism. The culture's particular qualities will be somewhere between the two poles. Now, in reference to a culture, collectivism is a philosophy positing that the well-being of the society should be prioritized over the individual's aspirations or freedoms. That is to say that when an individual takes action, they should be acting with consideration of how their action benefits or potentially affects or even honours the society in which they are living. And the way that they conceptualise their existence is largely based on their place in society, what they contribute to society and also what society has done for them. It also often works on the basis of modesty and honouring the greater good. So, for example, in a collectivist culture, an individual may be less likely to take credit for their success at work or their success in education, and rather attribute their success to society for giving them the opportunities to do so, or their boss for providing the right work environment, or their teacher for providing them with the right education. Often it involves foregoing taking credit for a success. It can also involve sometimes not tending to what one perceives as their own individual needs or feelings, because they perceive that their needs are actually in terms of what they do for society. And an individual in such circumstances will often not want to disturb the peace, so to speak, by speaking about what personally bothers them, because they might be concerned about disturbing collective harmony. Now, by comparison, individualism is a philosophy positing that one's service or duty to society should not be at the cost of individual freedom. And an individual in an individualist culture will often take credit for their successes and often place emphasis in what they value on their individual rights and their individual freedoms. Now, as I said, I'm unaware of any situation in which these polar opposites actually manifest in their entirety. Cultures will be more collectivistic or more individualistic as opposed to other cultures, but they will not be completely individualistic or collectivistic, and there will be combinations of the two ends of the dimension. Now, as I've said numerous times before, often the answers to problems in life are not absolutes. I'm not sure about how other cultures may function, but it's my observation that in Western culture, what people seem to believe is best appears to depend on the specific issue to which they're referring. So people may tend to believe in individualism or collectivism when the matter affects them personally, or when they believe that that particular manifestation of it, i.e. an individualist or collectivist manifestation, will benefit them. For example, if a person believes that they deserve to receive a certain benefit or a certain right, they may argue from an individualistic perspective that this is a matter of personal freedom, and they may disregard all arguments that actually suggest that it may be more important to prioritise collective well-being. Or if they're already part of a certain collective and aren't affected by a particular idea when others are forced to accept it, they may argue that society as a whole should be forced to accept it because the idea benefits them personally and they don't have to suffer the negative consequences of what happens when other people are forced to accept it. In reality, we need to balance these two qualities because we need to allow people individual freedom, and we need to allow nature to enact by letting people make mistakes, learn from their mistakes, and ultimately pursue their individual aspirations. But sometimes when a choice just impacts too many other people for it to be an individual issue, conformity is absolutely necessary. And whether this is from a cultural standpoint, whether it's in a private situation or whether it's from a legal standpoint, both conformity and individual freedoms have their benefits and they have their place, and we need to balance both. So think about some of the instances in which individualism is important. Since we live in an economy we need to earn an income. We have to work to earn an income. Therefore, since we're making that sacrifice, we have a right to choose a job, and that's an individual freedom from which people benefit. And of course, society also benefits because when people are given the freedom to do that, they are more likely to be able to pursue what they enjoy and where their skills are, which then in turn leads to better results of the job, and everybody else benefits from that. Since you have made that sacrifice, you might want to own property of some description. And because you've made that sacrifice, you have a right to own property. Because earning an income is necessary, you have a right not to be stopped unreasonably from earning an income. In your private life, if you choose to pursue certain activities with which other people may not agree, but which may be perfectly harmless, then you have a right to pursue it in your private life as long as nobody else's consent is violated. If you want to express yourself socially, then you have a right to express yourself. But in almost any human pursuit, there will be elements of that pursuit that also affect other people, and in those instances, conformity is extremely important. So, for example, while you have a right to choose your own job, once you're working that job, there may be other people in your workplace who are relying on you doing your job properly in order for them to do their job properly so that they can continue to exercise the same rights that you do. In that case, you have a duty to conform to workplace norms by spending the maximum effort you can and working effectively so that when you do your job well, other people can also do their jobs well and enjoy the same rights that you do. In your private life, you may enjoy certain activities, but those activities may also place other people at risk. And even though it may not be inevitable, sometimes the risk of harm to other people is so high that it's considered more reasonable to stop you from undertaking those activities in order to protect other people. For example, driving over the speed limit. The problem, as you can probably see, is that people interpret rights and what is consensual and what is harmful differently, as I've stated in the past. And as I've stated in a past episode, defining those concepts is extremely difficult to do. So, as always, I'm not trying to prescribe the absolute answers here. What I am trying to do is expose people to just how complex the world is. As I've said, the human mind can struggle significantly with navigating ambiguity in a complex world. And that's why ideologies like collectivist cultures and individualist cultures actually exist. They help the mind to organize the facts of life so that it can make quick decisions and ultimately decide what to do in life and what to do in different situations. Now, whether that's right or wrong in different ideologies is a completely separate matter. What I'm stating here is that the mind does need structure, and these ideologies and these cultural dimensions fulfill that need. But the journey to wisdom involves being able to discern the quality of an idea in itself without ideological bias, and that is a journey. It's something that we will probably never achieve in its entirety, but the journey is worthwhile nonetheless. And I hope that by making these explanations and giving some examples that you can be a more critical consumer of information as you observe what happens in the world. So thank you for joining me for today's episode. As per usual, do not take this as advice. If you need help of any description, seek professional advice. And I'd also love to hear from you if you have an opinion on what I've discussed today, or if you have an idea about what you'd like to hear on the program, if you'd like to join me on the program as a guest or collaborate if you're another host, please feel free to contact me. I would love to hear about your ideas. But until next time, take care.